Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Prococo, and I'm the Director of Transfers, Refunds, and Enrollments at the MTRS. And I will be presenting today's presentation on the implementation of Retirement Plus election changes for employers. This is the second round of seminars or webinars that we have. The first was in early February. We had 2 webinars. Everyone asked a lot of great questions. We're only doing one presentation this time around, and we'll post those slides as well as this video on our website. Just because I know that a lot of you are busy, and we certainly appreciate the time that you're taking this morning to join today's webinar. If at any time you have to leave, just know that you can always go back online to reference this material at any time. I saw a lot of familiar names on the registration list today, so I'm happy that a lot of you could make it. And with that being said, let's get started. We have a lot of important material to cover today. So today's presentation is broken into 5 different parts. The first part will be the need for Chapter 134 of the Acts of 2022, which is the new Retirement Plus law. There are 3 main important parts to that law, and we'll cover all of those parts. Part 2 will cover the special election for people that had a transfer into the MTRS between 7/1/2001 and 6/30/2022. It's a special election that we're in the middle of right now. Part 3 will cover the new election process for transfers that come in, and those are for transfers that are received on or after 7/1/2022 with membership date prior to that date. Part 4 will cover the elimination of the election during the transfer-in process. And Part 5 will cover the resources that we have on our website for both employers and members. So Part 1, the need for the new R Plus law, which is Chapter 134 of the Acts of 2022. Before we go into the need, we'll just cover the R Plus benefits, because I feel a lot of people don't really understand what Retirement Plus is. They don't know why it's so important and why there's an important election going on right now. So R Plus is an enhanced retirement benefit. So as a public employee in the state of Massachusetts, we all have defined benefit plans. And that means that when you retire, your retirement is based off of 3 factors. It's your age, your years of service, and then a salary average. So it's not really based on all of the money that you put in, but it's based off of these 3 factors. So for example, you have a member that has a $100,000 salary average at the time of retirement, and they reach the maximum benefit of 80%. You might hear people say that they want to reach 80%, and that's because that's the highest you can get. So with that salary average and that percentage, you would get an annual pension of $80,000 a year. So what does R Plus do? It gets you to that 80% a little bit faster than a regular retirement formula would. So once you hit 30 years of service, that percentage increases by 12%. And then every year after that, the percentage increases by 2%. So at 31 years, it increases by 14%. At 32 years, it increases by 16%. And everyone's situation is different. So we have retirement percentage charts that people can go online and reference to see where they would fall on the chart. One important thing is that a member has to be eligible and participating in order to be eligible to receive this R Plus enhanced benefit. And to be eligible for that, you have to have at least 30 years of service. 20 have to be with the MTRS or Boston, and the other 10 can be from another retirement system or through a service purchase where you can add on to your years if you had some public service in the past. So as you can see here, And I realize that during this presentation, we might have a lot of new payroll officers. I know there's been a lot of turnover, so it'll be good for you to see this chart and have an understanding of all the contribution rates in the state. So as you can see here with this grid, it can be a little confusing. There's a lot of rates in Massachusetts, but we're here to try to help break this down and make better sense of it. So if you look at that middle column where it says not participating in Retirement Plus, these are the rates for everyone across the state. So I'm a member of the state board. I would fall in this category because Retirement Plus is not offered to me. So if we go all the way down to the bottom and just stay with that middle column, you can see that anyone that started before January 1st, 1975 would have a contribution rate of a flat 5% on all of their gross earnings. Then, depending on when you start in the system, the law changed over the years and the rates increased. So between January 1st of 75 through December 31st of 78, anyone who established public membership during that time period would have a 7% contribution rate. So if you started before 75, you were locked in at 5%, but you start during that window of time, you would be at 7. So you would contribute that throughout your whole career. Your rate wouldn't increase as the years go along. You would be grandfathered in depending on when you started in the system. So if you work your way up again and you see January 1st of 79 through December 31st of 83, you would have 7% and then plus 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. And this is what everyone refers to as the plus 2. So then you work your way up again between January 1st of 84 through June 30th of 96. You would be an 8 plus 2 member. And again, that 2% is an additional 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. Then you look at July 1st of 96 through June 30th of 2001, you would be at 9 plus 2. So 9% on all of your gross earnings plus an additional 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. And this is where things get confusing in the pension system because 9 plus 2, obviously, everywhere else in the world equals 11, but not here. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on that on the next slide. But if we work our way up, you can see between July 1st, 2001 and April 1st, 2012, people that established membership not in the MTRS would be at that 9 plus 2. But then this is where things change with the MTRS and Boston, because there was a law change to introduce Retirement Plus to all of our members. So if you started in the system on or after July 1st, 2001 with no other previous public service, your contribution rate is a flat 11%, and that is Retirement Plus. So you're just automatically in. You start on or after that date with no other service. Then in 2012, we had another law change, and if you weren't in the MTRS and you established membership with another retirement board, you would still establish the rate of 9 plus 2, but then after 30 years of service, your contribution rate drops by 3%. So then you would be a 6 plus 2 member. So that would be 6% with an additional 2% on earnings over $30,000 a year. And you would be a tier 2 member. Anyone before that would be a tier 1 member. But then if you started with the MTRS or Boston, you would be in or mandated at 11%. And then after 30 years, that would decrease to a flat 8%. And notice there's no additional 2% when it comes to Retirement Plus. It's just a flat 11%. So the difference between the 11 and the 9 plus 2, and this is where things get confusing for people because obviously, like I said before, everywhere else 9 plus 2 equals 11. But when it comes to the Massachusetts pension system, 9 plus 2 does not equal 11. So the rate for R plus is a flat 11% on all gross earnings. And that lower rate, the lower non-R plus rate, is 9% on all gross earnings with an additional 2% taken on earnings over $30,000 a year. So you can see where this is confusing, and not just because 9 plus 2 equals 11 everywhere else, but you have the word plus. People refer to that additional 2% as the plus 2 or 9 and 2. People hear the word plus and they think it's retirement plus, or they think they have the plus and they think they're all set. But 9 plus 2 does not equal 11% for R plus. And when it comes to the difference, the monetary difference per year, the way the math works out, it's just $600 a year. No matter how much money you make, that difference will always be $600 a year. So if you're a new payroll officer, you're new to the district, and you're unsure of how to calculate that additional 2%, we do have materials on our website that you could view. In one of the member webinars that we just conducted a couple weeks ago, I go into detail of how to calculate this additional 2% contribution. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out that video and you can see how that is calculated. So now now we'll address the need for the new R plus law. So as of 7/1/2001, all new members of the MTRS are mandated into Retirement Plus, and that means that that is the law. They just have to be in Retirement Plus because that is what Chapter 32 says, except for people who transfer into the MTRS from one of the other 103 retirement systems. So if you were a teacher's aide or a para and you became a teacher, you most likely started contributing in your local retirement system and then transferred into the MTRS as a member with us. So whenever someone starts, or throughout the years, we've always instructed schools to take 11% for all of their new hires because we don't know if the person has money in another retirement system prior to becoming our member. And a lot of times the school doesn't know because you have people that they may not have been a para or a teacher's aide in your district and they're switching, and you don't know if they were a member of a local retirement system. And we're all not mind readers, so we don't know if that membership exists. So we instructed everyone to take 11%. And a lot of times too, members don't know what retirement system they belong to when they're a para or a teacher's aide. They might think they're with Mass Teachers Retirement System because we're the teacher's retirement system, but that's not the case. So our regulation provided 180 days from the date we receive someone's transfer from another retirement system to either elect into Retirement Plus at the 11%, or they can choose to maintain their lower established contribution rate that they had at their other retirement system. For some people, Retirement Plus may make sense. For some people, it may not make sense. So that's why people had the choice to elect in if they wanted to be in. So one of the issues and one of the big needs for this new law is that members thought that they were automatically in R plus due to contributing at 11% since the start of their MTRS membership. And there are some cases where transfers into our board may not have occurred for years after the person became a member. So they were contributing at 11% for years, and then all of a sudden they have this election that they have to make, or that they had to make, and they thought that they didn't have to make it because they were at 11% the whole time. And these delays occurred for years because some members don't enroll, I know there are a lot of people on this webinar that probably have difficulty receiving responses from some of their employees, and part of that is completing their enrollment on time. So if someone enrolls years down the road, we don't know about those funds until years down the road. Or if someone does complete their enrollment, there are times where they don't let us know of this other service, and we don't find out about it until 10, 15 years down the road. So that's one of the issues that we ran into with the way the law used to be written. So during that time period, during that 180 days, if no one responded due to the way the law was written, it would count as a no election. So people would default out of Retirement Plus. And you can imagine that people were very upset because they were contributing at 11% for years, thought they were in Retirement Plus, they had to make the election, they didn't respond, and then they would get very upset when they found out that they weren't in the system. People would apply for retirement or a service purchase or apply for a creditable service estimate and find out that they were not in Retirement Plus. So without this legislative change, the number would continue to grow every single year, increasing the people that default out of Retirement Plus. So that's the end of this section. And one thing I forgot to mention is that at the end of each part of this presentation, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have questions, this would be the time to ask it, and for all the future sections of the webinar. So with that, I'll check with our Director of Communications and see if we have any questions.
Hi, Dave. We do have one question. And again, anyone who has any questions at any time during this presentation can type it into the Q&A. And we have a team of people who are answering questions live, and we are sharing certain questions with the group. First question we have, if someone's email address has changed, do we just change it on the MTRS website, or do we need to notify someone at the MTRS as well?
That's a great question. So you don't actually have the ability to change the member's email in the system. So you would have to email us that change, and then we would update it manually on our end to make that change.
Okay, that's the only question in the Q&A window at this point. So why don't we go forward?
Thanks. Okay, so part 2, we'll discuss the special election that's going on right now. And that is for people that have had transfers sent to the MTRS between 7/1/01 and 6/30 of 22. So the new law, another part or important part of the new law is that for everyone who did not respond to their R plus election, I'll take it a step back. So if we received a transfer from another board between July 1st, 2001 and June 30th, 2022, that person also established membership with the MTRS in that same window of time, and they did not respond to their election opportunity within their 180-day window, will receive another one-time chance to elect into Retirement Plus. So earlier when I mentioned the numbers continue to grow, or they would continue to grow without legislative action, during the time before the law changed, the numbers were continuing to grow. So this election is to give all of those people another one-time chance to be in Retirement Plus. But one important thing to mention is that people that established a membership prior to 7/1/2001 are not part of this election, because they were part of the original election opportunity in 2001 and would have had to make an election at that point. They're really two different elections and two different animals when it comes to Retirement Plus. But one thing that's important is that people from the original election are not eligible for the special election. So this section is important. So people who, or members who receive this special packet, are not currently in Retirement Plus. So in order for them to be in R Plus, members must complete and submit their election. So even if the person has been contributing at 11% for the entire time, it could have been for the last 10 years, it could have been for the last 15 years. If they were on the list that we just sent to school districts, and we'll go over that in a little bit, they are not in Retirement Plus. They must make an election if they want to participate in this program. So our instructions and yours, if the member doesn't respond to the election, they will not be in Retirement Plus. So it is really important that they read the materials that they send or that we send to them and that they make an election during this special election. So if you have questions about the eligibility criteria or if members have any questions about that, they can always visit our website at our R Plus Resource Center, and we'll go over that Resource Center in part 5 of this presentation. So the original election packets were mailed back on January 11th, 2023 by our election processing vendor, Yes Elections. It's important to know that a second election packet is going to be mailed to anyone who hasn't responded on March 31st to all of the eligible members who has not yet responded. So those will be going out in the next week and a half or so. So it's important to know that those are going out. Members can vote online, and as part of that ballot, we'll show you a screenshot pretty soon. There's a special code. There's a unique code and a pin on the ballot. So if they want to vote online, they can do that. Or if they want to use the paper ballot, there's a prepaid envelope that they can use to mail it back to Yes Elections. And one important part of that is that it has to go back to the vendor. It shouldn't be mailed to the MTRS. People shouldn't be giving you ballots. They should be submitting the elections online on their own and submitting it to our vendor and not the district or the MTRS. And that election period ends on Friday, June 30th, 2023. So here you can see a sample ballot. It's a long piece of paper that unfolds when they open up the envelope. There's the election code there in the middle section along with the pin. And if someone wants to send in the paper ballot, there's a perforated part down below that they can tear off and send back in the prepaid envelope. But to the right there, you can see what the envelope will actually look like and what they should be looking for in the mail. And we've had some feedback from some members that they got this and they just thought it was junk. They threw it out. They didn't know what to do with it. So they just ignored it, even though it says urgent and that their participation ballot isn't closed. It's important that they know what this looks like and that they should look out for that when they're mailed out again on March 31st. So far, some updated results. We have 1,461 total votes. 1,204 were done online. 257 were done through the mail. And we have 1,293 that have elected to participate. And we have 168 that have elected not to participate. So steps for a successful implementation of R+. So our responsibilities as an agency, we've done a lot to try to educate both members and employers, hence the webinar we're having today. But we've done a lot of communication during this project. And as far as member communications go, back on October 7th, 2022, we sent an email to all of our MTRS members just letting them know that an election was coming. Then on October 31st, we targeted everyone that was part of the special election and sent them emails letting them know that they would receive the special election. And naturally, there were some emails that came back as non-deliverable because we had the wrong email addresses. So what we did with those people was group them with the people that we didn't have email addresses for And we mailed letters to all of those people back on November 10th to let them know that the special election would be happening. Then when it comes to employer broadcasts, we've sent emails to school districts on September 1st, October 31st, November 28th, just to let everyone know that the special election was happening. Then back on January 12th, we emailed each superintendent a list of all of the people that were eligible to make an election during the special election. And just yesterday, we sent updated list of everyone who hadn't submitted an election as of March 7th. So everyone's on that list. And this time around, we were able to CC a lot of payroll and HR officials. And I hope a lot of you are on this webinar today. And I just want to let you know that we've received a lot of responses back, and I certainly appreciate the time that all of you have taken to get back to us and provide us with the email addresses that we had missing in the system. So we definitely appreciate that. And if you haven't done so, just take a look at the email, see if you have any people with email addresses that you can supply for us. And also take a look at the addresses to see if they're accurate, to make sure that we're mailing it to the right place, because we're taking these addresses from the monthly deduction reports. We get those from you. So hopefully with timely submission, we have the most accurate address in the system. So then again, there's going to be a reminder to all eligible members who haven't submitted their election. That'll happen in late March. And we will also have another webinar for eligible members on April 4th, 2023 at 4 p.m. The first one we had was during school vacation week back on February 23rd. And this time around, we hope to capture a lot more people having the webinar be in the afternoon. And then we have employers notified of rate changes. So that hasn't happened yet. That's to be determined. However, what I can tell you is that we are going to target sending our first round of rate changes in the beginning, around the beginning of April. And that is to ensure that we can expect to see rate changes in the system as of April 2023. But there'll be more on that to follow. So for employer steps on your end, you can direct all member questions to the MTRS and promote the RPlus Resource Center. It's a new website just in the last few months dedicated to Retirement Plus. There's a lot of good information on there, and you should definitely check it out. You and the members should check it out if you have any other questions related to RPlus. And if you can, please remind members to respond to the election. I know from the email yesterday, a lot of you have already emailed back and said that they've reached out to people several times. We certainly, again, appreciate that, because I know how difficult it is to get a response from people. Hence why we're in this election right now. People didn't respond. And I know that there have been struggles on the district end, even just trying to get email addresses. So I certainly appreciate the efforts that you're taking to try to get this information and to try to get these people to make their election. You can take a look at the list that we sent yesterday and let us know of any changes that you have to the district list. I know that there are some members on there that may not have contributed in your district for a long period of time. They may not have worked there for a few years. If that is the case, all you have to do is go into My TRS and update their events to let us know that they no longer work in your district. And then they'll switch from an active member to an inactive member, and that'll just give us some updated information on that person. So when it comes to rate changes, only make the rate changes once you're notified by us. I wouldn't make the rate change based off of the member's request. And I know that that has happened. There are some people that can be quite demanding. They want things done yesterday. They want their rates changed. But please wait for us to send that official notification to make the rate change. So steps for a successful implementation of the special election. So what will happen after the election, our post-election steps, is that after 6:30, we will determine who is currently contributing at 11%, the rate for R plus, who has not responded to the election, and we will request for their rates to be changed to their lower contribution rate. In a lot of these cases, it's going to be that 9+2 rate. There might be some 8+2 in there, but we will let you know what rate it should be after they don't respond. Hopefully there's not a lot of people in that boat, but we certainly do anticipate people to not respond to this election. So we will confirm the rate change after processing a district's deduction report. So once we send these rate changes, we will have to wait to see that change posted to the members' accounts. So if we target April 2023 for that first set of rate changes, then the April 2023 deduction report has to be released into the system in order for us to start those calculations, because we need to see the complete picture before making that final calculation. So we have a number of members that will end up in a lot of different groups after this election. So we might have people that have elected to participate in R plus. They've already paid in, or they've always paid in at 11%. There's no rate change there. We would simply just send the member a confirmation email, and we would CC you as well to just confirm that that person should be in at 11%. If the member has elected to participate in and they haven't paid at 11% during part or all of their MTRS service, we would send them an invoice with installment options for amounts over $1,000. I know some people are anxious about that because they don't know how they're going to pay for this, but we do have some payment options for these members. If a member elected to opt out, or if they elect to opt out of R plus and they have paid at 11% during any time of their MTRS service, the member would receive a refund of the excess contributions between the 11% and that lower contribution rate that they established at their other retirement system. So the post-election steps continued. So we have about 8,000 members part of this special election. And we will imagine that it'll take at least 6 months after the election period ends to complete the steps listed on the previous slide. So we're looking at the end of this calendar year before we start invoicing people or refunding people, just because we have to wait for some contributions to post. We will prioritize people retiring. They shouldn't delay filling their retirement application. We have people screening applications now to see if they're part of the special election, and we'll try to have them submit their election as soon as they can so we can determine what the correct rate is. But if we need to bill someone, we'll probably reach out to you to receive an export of their payroll contribution so we can finalize that calculation even before contributions are posted and get their account in order before they retire. And it's also important to know that we are in this together, and consistent messaging is key. So if you ever have any questions about anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like I said before, this video will be on the website. You can always reference this. You can email the Retirement Plus inbox, and we will be happy to get back to you and answer your questions. And with that being said, does anyone have any questions on anything that we have covered so far?
Yes, Dave, we've got a number of questions in the chat. The first one is, how do we, as HR administrators, see in MyTRS what election a person has taken?
That's a great question. So In my TRS, once you log into the system, there is an employee roster screen, and you can go to that person's screen and it will let you know what the person's rate should be as well as their R plus status. And people that are part of the special election, at the beginning of the election, everyone was listed as not participating in Retirement Plus, and it would show a lower rate. So everyone that hasn't responded yet will still have that status and a lower rate in the system. But people that have been making elections, and this is one of the changes from this webinar and the last webinar, is that since that webinar, we as an agency have gone in and made updates to people's R plus statuses depending on their election. So if people have elected yes, it will now show that they are in Retirement Plus, that their rate is 11%, and if they're not in Retirement Plus, it'll show that they're not participating in Retirement Plus and they're at the lower rate. So we had to make all of these changes prior to sending out rate change notifications. So some of you may notice on deduction reports that there is a rate discrepancy for that person, and we've already received some questions on that. So like I said earlier, we anticipate sending rate changes beginning of April, and at some point those rate discrepancies won't be there anymore. However, it is important to know that you can go to the employee roster screen and you can see that person's rate and R plus status.
Great, thanks, Dave. Next question. We were sent a sample email with a picture of a sample ballot. That sample is not editable, so we cannot provide a picture of the ballot on the email that MTRS is requesting we send. Could we receive an editable sample?
No, so we don't want to send editable samples because we don't want people making elections through that ballot. One thing that and I can actually, I'll bring it back to the screenshot that we had earlier and show you, is that sample ballot right there. I believe that that's what you're talking about. This is just to show you what this looks like and what the person can expect to fill out once they receive it. In the past, and I'm glad you brought up this question, schools would have stacks of old R plus election forms. And what I'd like to say is get rid of those forms because they are no longer valid. We're not using those forms anymore. It's part of the old process, and we have this new ballot now for this special election. This is how we know that the person belongs to this election, and when they make the election, it should be from this ballot, either from that election code and PIN, which they get from the vendor. We don't even have access to these codes, so if people asked us for them, we couldn't even provide it to them. They have to get it from the vendor. And same with that, the perforated section down at the bottom. If you look sideways, you can see it says control number at the bottom. That control number belongs to a specific member. So when they get that ballot, they have to fill out that form that is sent by the vendor. They can't just fill out a random form and then submit it to the vendor to have their election recorded.
Thanks, Dave. Next question. Can you please expand on the rate changes? Increase to 11%, or will a retro be expected via payroll?
So I think that there might be two questions there. So one, so there are going to be rate changes, and it's not just people that elect to participate in at 11% and changing to 11%. Excuse me. But we might have people that choose not to participate and they're at 11%. So rate changes are going to go either way. They're either going to be changed to 11 or they're going to go down to a lower rate. And for people that will be changed to the higher rate and owe money, we don't have the capability right now to charge people through payroll. So we just can't have that happen. when we send the invoices out to the members, they will have a few different options. They can either pay it in full um, via a lump sum through a check to the system. If it's over $1,000, they can elect to participate in a 5-year installment plan, which includes interest. Or they can roll money over from another pre-tax institution. So there is time for people to start saving because we may not send these bills out until the end of the year. So there is time to save. If people have a 403B, for example, and they've been set up for a while, then they may be able to use that money and roll it over to pay for their invoice. But if they don't have a 403B, they could set it up now and start saving, and then at least by the time we get to December, if they want to use pre-tax money, they'll have it in that account, and they should be able to roll over some or all of what is owed to the system as part of the election. But unfortunately, we can't do it through payroll.
Thanks, Dave. So if a person was in another retirement program, like a para or teacher's assistant, would they be able to move their service into the MTRS and that move will be fully transferred?
Yes. So everyone that is part of the special election right now has already had that happen. They've already had their accounts transferred here to the MTRS. And if they didn't respond to the election, then they're in that boat right now. But if someone was a para or a teacher's aide and they haven't had their funds transferred yet, they would have let us know about those funds through the enrollment process, and um, they could be in a queue right now to have us request those funds to be transferred, and then they would be part of a new election process, which we'll actually cover in the next section. But yes, the whole account has to transfer here according to Chapter 32.
Next question, will we receive a list or notification every time a member becomes eligible?
So I guess yes and no. So we sent out lists yesterday for everyone that's part of the special election. And it should be the same group of members that we've determined belong to this election. So the next time we send a list, I believe we plan on doing another one-time list to school districts before the election is over for one last push. But that will have the most up-to-date people that have not yet responded to the election.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I informed my staff about this, and this is a question I received from an eligible staff member. The question is, will this make me eligible going forward, or will there be some sort of I have to buy back time component? I'm very interested in being part of Retirement Plus, but I'm afraid that I will get a crazy bill to buy back time, and that would be problematic.
Yeah. And that's a good question. So if they're part of this election, they have the opportunity to be in Retirement Plus. And there are some situations where people are going to have to owe back money to the system. And we'll cover um, potential costs in a future part of this presentation. However, this is a decision. It could be a tough decision for some people to choose whether or not they want to participate because they may owe a significant amount of money. And in the earlier slide, I mentioned that the monetary value is $600 per year that someone would owe. So, if they were at the lower rate for 10 years, that would be $6,000 that they would have to owe back to the system. And I realize that's a significant amount of money, and it's tough for people to know how much they would owe. And that's tough for us as well because we have 8,000 people part of this election, and we can't calculate those amounts for everyone. So we put resources on our website to try to help people try to figure out how much money they would owe. And some people might know because we've sent rate changes in the past where we were operating under the old law, and they may have been contributing at the lower rate for the last 6 years or so. So some people should have an idea of whether or not they would owe money. And they can also look at their pay stub too to see if they're at the higher rate or if they're at the lower rate, and try to have some idea based off of that, and as well as their membership, for how much money that they could potentially owe to the system.
Great. Keeping an eye on the time. Take two more.
Sure.
Okay. If our payroll system is automatically deducting MTRS for all teachers at 11%, do we have to back in and change to 9% and 2% if they have not elected into R+?
So as of right now, no. However, at the end of the election, we will have a group of members that do not respond, and those people will have to be changed down to the 9+2. It most likely will be the lower 9+2 rate, but in some cases it could be 8+2, it could be 7+2. It'll all depend on when that person established a membership in a mass public retirement system, which was listed on the grid on the prior slide. But yes, for everyone that doesn't respond, their rates will have to be changed if they're currently at 11%.
Okay, last one. I think you already touched upon most of this, but we'll do it again. Are members able to request a quote for what they would owe before they decide to elect? I believe I read that they are not, and if that is the case, is the $600 a year figure they can use to calculate what they might owe?
That's correct. So that $600 a year figure is what they can use to determine what they would owe to the system. And we will show you screenshots later of the new section of our website that will help members make that determination for how much money they could owe to the system. But if their lower rate is the 9%, with the additional 2% over 30,000, it will always be $600 a year as long as they're making over $30,000 a year. And I don't anticipate that people are making below $30,000 a year now. So that amount should always be $600. And then for people that are 8+2, the calculation's a little bit more complicated, but we simplify it on our website, and we can show you that a little bit later on.
Thanks, Dave. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, so part 3, the new election process for transfers that are received on or after 7/1/2022. So now we're outside of the window of the special election, and for people that established membership prior to 7/1/2022. So this is a big change in the law that helps fix the issue of people defaulting out of the program, because now it's essentially changed. So if you have a member, and I'll say this again, so a transfer was received on or after 7/1/2022, so outside of that window, and they established public service prior to 7/1/2022. There is now an opt-out provision for these members. So if we receive that transfer, the member must now opt out of Retirement Plus if they don't want to be in. The way it used to be is if they didn't respond, then they would default out of Retirement Plus. But now if they want to be out of Retirement Plus, they have to let us know. Because once we receive that transfer, the member will have the same 180 days to opt out. And if they don't respond, they will default into Retirement Plus. They'll automatically be in the program. So for these people that if they don't respond and they default in, if they don't meet the requirements for R Plus that we discussed on the earlier slide, they have to have 30 years of service, 20 have to be with the MTRS, 10 can be with another retirement system or through a service purchase. If they don't meet those requirements at the time of retirement, they will receive an excess refund of the difference between the 11% and the lower rate that was established at their other retirement system. So for now, continue to take 11% for all new members that you register in my TRS. And you can also see their R plus status on that employee roster screen that I mentioned earlier. And it's probably good practice to do that for every single person that you register, because um, they may have elected out of Retirement Plus in the past, and you don't want to take 11% for that new employee that you have. Um, so that's why we have that information in the system for you to check. But if you know the person is brand new to public service, they were never a teacher's aide, they're brand new as a member in the retirement system, then you want to take 11% for that person. And here's a sample participation form that we have as part of this new process. So I know some of you have the old form in your system or at your office. You probably printed a bunch to give to members to fill out, but that form is no longer valid. So this is what our new R Plus election form looks like. You can see that there were some changes. The R Plus election logo is newer. Um, at the top part there in red, we put their due date to return the form to us. So hopefully it sparks a little more attention and gets the member to act to submit this form to us. One important change, or another important change to this process, is that this election form is not available on our website. So schools won't be able to generate this form. If a member has the opportunity to opt out, we are mailing this form to their house, and the form is also available in my TRS in the member self-service portal. So that's a big change from the old process where the member couldn't log on and get their form if they were missing it. Now they can log in and download that form online if they have to submit that to us. We didn't have that as part of the last presentation, but we, through feedback, and it was a great suggestion, was to show this form so you have an idea of what it looks like. Does anyone have any questions about the new R Plus election process?
Hi, Dave. Yes, I've got a question here. An employee started as a teacher contributing to the MTRS at 11% prior to June 30, 2022. They changed position to BCBA for the fiscal year 2023, not eligible for MTRS.
No.
Now contributing to state retirement. Okay, so if they resume a teaching position at a later time, will the new election process apply?
Great question. So for that person, if they established their public membership with the MTRS, as long as it was after 7/1/2001 with no prior public service, then they're mandated at 11%. So for MTRS, for their MTRS membership, they would be at 11%. When they transfer over to the state, they will be at the lower 9+2 rate, that 9% with the additional 2% over $30,000. If they ever return back to a teaching position and they become our member again, they don't get the election. They have to be at the 11% because they established that rate when they became a member with us.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, in part four, another important part of this R plus law, which is eliminating the election for some transfers that come into our system. So for members who establish public membership in a local retirement system or the MTRS anywhere in Massachusetts on or after 7/1/2022, and they have a transfer into the MTRS, and the transfer has to occur after 7/1/2022 because they had to become a member after that date. The election provision has been eliminated. So these people who have service transfer in are mandated into Retirement Plus. Just like any other new hire with no prior service in a retirement system. So if we use that example as of the para, let's say that para started 9/1/2022. They contributed to the local system and they transfer into the MTRS. Those people will not receive an election and they will automatically be mandated into Retirement Plus. So just like any other new member, they're mandated into the system. When they go to retire, if they don't meet the 30-year requirement, they won't receive a refund of the difference between 11% and the lower rate from the previous retirement system. And that is because Chapter 32 is saying that 11% is what that person's rate has to be. They don't have a choice, it's mandated. So just like any other new member in the system, they wouldn't receive a refund if they retired and had less than 30 years of service. So for all these, for new employees that established membership on or after 7/1/2022, brand new in the system, just take 11% for those people. However, we strongly encourage that you look at their rate in My TRS on the employee roster screen just to double check they should be at 11%. You should be able to see it on that screen. And just to recap the three different main sections of the law, we'll start at the top here. So the top part are the people that are in the special election. So if you look at their MTRS membership dates, if the person started between 7/1/01 and 6/30 of 22, and the MTRS received a transfer within that same window of time, if they met that criteria and they did not respond to their election opportunity after we receive their transfer, then they are part of this special election that is going on right now. So again, another part of this election is that if these people don't respond by Friday, June 30th of 23, we will determine that they are not participating in R Plus after that point, and they will not have another opportunity to be in this program again. There will not be another chance. So that's why it's really important that these people make an election during this period. And we realize that there are a lot of people that may not want to be in Retirement Plus. However, they should still submit an election so we know that they don't want to be in Retirement Plus. And if that's the case, it could expedite a rate change on their end, and they wouldn't have to wait until July to have their rate changed. So that's that first group, that special election group. Now we have the second group of people where if someone started on or after 7/1/2001 and they had service from another retirement system prior to 7/1 of 2022, and that transfer is received on or after 7/1/2022, the member will automatically be enrolled in R Plus unless they opt out within 180 days after their transfer. So they would make the election on that new form that we showed you earlier. And we could have situations where members started in 2002 and never let us know about their public service, and we received the transfer after 7/1/2022. They could have been contributing at 11% for the last 15, 20 years. This person will have to opt out if they don't want to be in Retirement Plus. Otherwise, they are going to default into the system. So for these people, if they don't qualify for R Plus at the time of retirement, they will receive the excess refund of their contributions between that flat 11% and their lower contribution rate that they established at the other retirement system. So that's the new opt-out group of members. Then we have the last group of people where if they establish public membership on or after 7/1/2022, and the MTRS received a transfer after 7/1/2022, this person is just mandated into Retirement Plus. They don't get an election. their rate is just a flat 11%. And when they hit retirement and they don't meet 30 years of service, they don't get a refund of the additional contributions between that 11% and the lower rate established at the other retirement system. These are just tier 2 members that are mandated into R+. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Hi, Dave. We've got one in the queue. When we register new staff, we are to take the 11% going forward. However, what if the system shows that they are at 9+2 or other type of contribution rate? Should we take that figure or still take the 11%?
What I would do in the next couple months is I would refer to the list that we sent you and just check to make sure that that person is not part of the special election. And if they are not part of the special election, then I would take the rate that you see in my TRS, because there could have been a previous determination on their rate through an election, and I would go with what the system says. I think a lot of the time you're going to see that the rate is going to be 11%, but there is a chance that someone moving from a different district could be at a lower rate. So I would look at the employee roster screen and I would go with that.
Great. We have one more. Will the 11% for the teacher who became BCBA state retirement contributor be at 11% retirement plus or at 11% and not retirement plus?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the question a few minutes ago where an employee started as a teacher at the MTRS at 11 prior to 6/30/22, changed their position to BCBA, which is contributing to state retirement. So will the 11% for the teacher who became BCBA, a state retirement contributor, be at 11% retirement plus or 11% not retirement plus?
So if they returned as a member of the MTRS, they would have to be at 11% for retirement plus. However, with the state, they would be at the non-retirement plus rate, most likely 9+2, the lower rate. So if that person were to retire with the state, they would retire with a regular retirement benefit. It would be the same benefit that I would be getting as a state employee, and they would not get retirement plus. For those 11% contributions that transfer over to the state, that just has to stay in their account because they were required to make those contributions to the system. So even though they contributed at 11% for whatever period of time, if they retire with the state, those contributions would just stay on account with them.
Great, thanks. That's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. All right, part 5, the last part of the presentation. So our R+ resources for both employers and members. So as I mentioned before, we have a new R+ resource center on our website. If you go to the home page there, you can see the new R+ logo with the link to the resource center. You would just have to click on that, and we have a lot of great information on the website. You can see that there's R+ changes. There's an overview video on that. There's a special election video for members. We had a webinar a couple weeks ago that is on there that has a lot of important information on there. There's decision information, information to help make a decision. You can review the eligibility, the benefits, as well as the costs associated with Retirement Plus. Members can always request a replacement ballot. We would verify their eligibility, that they're part of this election before requesting the ballot, just because I think that there are some members that may have snuck in there that aren't part of this election asking for a ballot. So before we do that, we'll just verify the eligibility. And all of the questions related to R+ should be directed at retirementplus@trb.state.ma.us. And just want to give a quick shout out to our communications team for putting this together. as well as all the videos on the website, requesting replacement ballots. I know that there are people on our team here that have spent a lot of time working on this, so thank you to everyone involved. Now, meeting the requirements for R Plus and how much it'll cost. So we have a decision tree within that R Plus Resource Center there, and we'll cover those different tabs that are at the top. You can see a flat 11%, 9+2, and 8+2. So if you're at a flat, or if the person is at a flat 11%, they'll continue to pay 11% on all of their future wages, including or not including any retroactive costs if they've been at the 11% their entire MTRS career or during their membership. They wouldn't owe any money if they've been at 11 the whole time. Then you have members that if they elect in and they were at 9+2, they would have 11% taken on their wages going forward. And then we would have to charge back any retroactive cost, which would be $600 a year. So it's really, the person has to go back and really try to figure out how many years have they been at 11. If they've sent any rate changes, they can go back and try to guess how long they've been at a lower rate since then. They should check their pay stub to make sure that they're, to determine what rate they're contributing at. A lot of people, they don't know how to do that. And a lot of people have been asking us that. So as part of the member webinar, we gave examples on how to check that and where they can go to do that. So if they've been at the lower rate for 5 years, they might owe $3,000. If it's been 10 years, it might be $6,000. If it's 15 years, it could be upwards of $9,000. And obviously, these are for illustrative purposes only. All the final costs will be calculated at the end of the election. We just can't do it right now due to the volume, but we will have final amounts once people make the decision to be either in or out of Retirement Plus. Then we have the 8+2 members, and it's not as simple as $600 a year. So if someone chose to participate to be in Retirement Plus, we would change or request to change their rate to 11. They would have 11% withheld on all of their future wages until they retire. But then figuring out the difference between that 11 and 8+2 can be a little difficult. However, if you look at someone's salary, so if someone's making $40,000 a year, then the difference between that 11% and the 8+2 is going to be $1,000 a year. And you can see that when that salary increases by $10,000, the amount that they owe will increase by $100. So you can see if they make $10,000 more at $50,000, then the difference is going to be $1,100 instead of $1,000. And for every $10,000, it'll just increase by $100. So you can see that example down at the bottom. Sarah Teacher has 10 years of prior MTRS service. Her average wages during that service was $70,000. Thus, her retroactive cost would be around $13,000. $1,300 per year times 10 years at $13,000. I have seen some cases where there are 8+2 members where they might owe between $25,000 and $30,000. And obviously, the difference between the 11 and 8+2 is a lot more. So they could expect that cost to be a lot higher. So important items from today's presentation. If anyone has any questions, please direct them to the MTRS. Have them email retirementplus@trb.state.ma.us. Everyone who has received a special election packet is not currently in R Plus. If they want to be, they must elect in. So every one part of the list that we sent, they have to respond to the selection if they want to be in. Again, even if they've been contributing at 11% for the last 15 years, if they got this election packet, they have to respond and indicate they want to be in Retirement Plus if they want to receive that enhanced benefit someday. And if people don't respond to this election and they're contributing at 11%, we are going to request that their rate is changed to the lower rate. So if the member believes that they're already in R plus, please tell them they still have to fill out and submit the selection. There may have been some cases where members try to get ahead of the game and they may have submitted an old form prior to the selection. And if that's the case, that election is not going to count. They need to submit it during this election window and through the ballot that was sent to them in the mail. And that could be the case for anyone that submitted elections late over the last 20 years. There have been members that they wanted to be in Retirement Plus. They sent us a form. We're looking through their account. We see that we received it way after their election deadline. So it is important that they fill it out during this election window and use the ballot that is mailed to them. And again, if anyone has requested that their rate should be changed, please don't change the rate until we notify you. We plan on sending these rate changes hopefully by the beginning or around the beginning of April. And when that is the case, we will be CCing the member on the email to the school district to change that rate. Excuse me. So they should be aware of that rate change when it is happening. This election window closes on Friday, June 30th, 2023. It is important that that election is received online by that date. I believe it goes to midnight. Or if they're mailing it in, it has to be postmarked by June 30th, 2023. If it's postmarked after that date, they are not going to be in Retirement Plus. So it is very important to have them submit the selection prior to that date. One important thing and questions we've had in the past, and I think it's worth mentioning now, excuse me, is that people have had hardships in the past. They haven't been able to make elections, and unfortunately, there's no provision that deals with any hardships that people may have when dealing with this election. So if someone is out on a leave of absence now and they're not going to return until August, it's important that they make this election during their leave of absence because they're not going to get another chance to elect into the program. Same with if someone gets sick a week or two prior to the election and they can't submit an election prior to the deadline due to their illness or being hospitalized, that election is going to be considered late if it is sent after June 30, 2023. So it is important that people make an informed decision prior to that deadline. They have a lot of time left still in this election window. We have a lot of great materials online, and they should really research and know what they're doing before they make this election. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions about anything that we covered?
Yes, Dave, we do have a few questions. We have gone a few minutes over, so I want to thank the well over 100 attendees that we had today, and it looks like most of them have stayed with us. So thank you very much. First question: how do I request that I receive the same emails that the superintendent is receiving?
Just if you could email the R Plus inbox and let us know, we can add you to that distribution the next time we send the list around. And we can also forward that list to you if you haven't seen it yet.
Why is my TRS down monthly?
Well, periodically, monthly, we have to perform maintenance on the system. So in order to do that maintenance and make upgrades to the system, it's important that the system is down, because if people try to log in and do anything while an upgrade is happening, it could cause issues in the system. So that's the reason why we have to take it down. And I believe you may be referring to the warrant that happens monthly for retiree insurance deductions.
Next question. Most of our teachers are at 11% now. If they don't reply to the ballot, does this mean they will be changed to 9 plus 2%?
That is correct. So if you have a bunch of people at 11% now and they do not respond to this election by Friday, June 30th, 2023, they will default out of Retirement Plus, and we will request for their rates to be changed to 9+2. So that's why we really appreciate any help that you can give us in trying to reach out to these employees to have them make this important election. Um, and not only have we asked you for some assistance, but we've also reached out to the MTA and the AFT, letting them know of their members who haven't responded yet. And um, the more help we can get from people, the better. Um, but that is a great question because if they don't respond, they will not be in Retirement Plus. And if they don't want to be in Retirement Plus, they should still respond because if they're at 11, then their rate will be changed sooner rather than later. But people should submit these elections if they're getting them.
Great. And the last question I have is, I have employees who show up on my monthly deduction report as member not enrolled. Are you including them in this special election?
There may be some members who haven't enrolled that are part of this election. However, that's a different issue uh, entirely as it relates to this election. And when a member is registered in the system, so we talked about registrations earlier, once they're registered, they have 30 days to go online and complete that enrollment. If they don't do that, then they're going to show up on those exception reports. So as soon as they're done being registered, I believe at the end of the process, there's a button where you can send an email to that employee, and that email has instructions on what they have to do to complete their enrollment, and it also has the 30-day due date. So they should be doing that within 30 days of when you register them in the system. If they don't enroll on time, it can cause issues later down the road, um, like having a transfer come in years down the road when it shouldn't have taken that long. Or if people apply for refunds, it'll delay the refund process. And excuse me, members get upset when they can't get their money. Well, they should have filled the paperwork or the online information that we requested when they first started as employees. But as soon as they do that, that exception should disappear from the deduction report.
Okay, got a couple more. These next two both revolve around the interest rate. Would there be interest on the amount owed for years at a lower rate? And is interest charged on the difference due to opting into R plus?
Another great question. So interest will be charged at the rate, or it's actually half of the actuarial rate. We call it the buyback rate. So the actuarial rate right now is at 7%. So half of that is at 3.5%. And we will not start charging interest until 90 days after we send the invoice out. So that clock on the interest doesn't start ticking until we send those invoices out. And then they'll have 90 days to figure out what they want to do as far as how they want to pay that amount back.
Great, thank you. I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thanks everyone for attending today. I apologize that we went over. I hope that you were able to learn something today. And excuse me, as always, we're here. If you have questions, just email us. We spent a lot of time updating our materials on our website to be able to provide all of this information. I know it's a lot, but thank you for attending today. And I also just want to give a quick thank you to all the staff involved here today that made today happen, because it was a lot of work to get this webinar off the ground, and everyone answering questions in the other room. It is much appreciated.
Sorry, one last question just came in. It's a good one. Is there a sample email we can send to our employees to remind them about the benefits of responding to the ballot?
Yes, another great question. So yesterday, as part of the mailing or emailing that we sent out, we provided a sample message that you can send to these employees. as well as a screenshot of what that envelope looks like. So when the replacement ballots go out at the end of the month, they'll know to look out for the envelope, or if you share the image with them, that it'll have the R Plus logo on there, and it tells them that they have to vote. But if you share that with them, at least they'll know it's hopefully that it's not junk and that they should respond to it.
All set. Thanks very much, David.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.